Good evening and welcome to Hairenik Media. Tonight we reflect on a national tragedy that continues to shape Armenia's destiny. 5 years after the 44-day Artsakh war ended in a defeatist agreement, Artsakh was depopulated, our ancestral lands were surrendered to Baku, and the consequences for both Artsakh and Armenia remain grave. The same government that betrayed Artsakh now targets the church, opposition, and civil society, serving only Turkish-Azerbaijani interests. The administration, which sacrificed Artsakh in 2020 and again in 2023, will not hesitate to do the same with the sovereign territories of Tavush, Syunik, and Gegarkunik as Baku presses on with expansionist provocations under the guise of so-called Western Azerbaijan. 5 years on, the wounds remain deep, not only from Azerbaijan's aggression, but from the failure of Armenia's leadership to protect its people and heritage. Decisions once presented as peace efforts have instead come to symbolize surrender, erasure, and a historic loss carried out in silence and complacency. The lives lost, the displaced, and the cultural destruction remain a haunting reminder of a national tragedy worsened by inaction, mismanagement, and abdication of duty. In a controversial and widely criticized statement, and in yet another attempt to rewrite history, Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev denied the existence of Armenia's Lake Sevan, insisting it should be called Lake Guise, and declaring it Azerbaijani. He further claimed that Azerbaijanis could return to Armenia not with tanks, but with cars, a remark widely interpreted as a veiled threat to Armenia's sovereignty. But history tells a different story. Historic maps from 1737 and 1832, along with the Sevan monastery built in 874 AD, firmly affirm Lake Sevan's Armenian identity. Observers view Aliyev's claims as part of a broader ongoing effort to erase Armenian cultural and historical heritage. Armenia's leadership has faced sharp criticism for its muted response to the Azerbaijani dictator's increasingly aggressive rhetoric. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan said he would first clarify Aliyev's statements before reacting, later downplaying them as references to Tsarist-era maps, a response many saw as weak and evasive. Parliament Speaker Alen Simonyan went further, welcoming Aliyev's remark that Azerbaijanis would return not in tanks but in cars, drawing backlash for normalizing hostile rhetoric. Despite escalating threats, Pashinyan continues to emphasize Yerevan's commitment to peace, inviting Turkish and Azerbaijani leaders to next year's European Political Community Summit in Yerevan, an invitation Baku has already dismissed. Analysts warn that such symbolic diplomacy and passivity risk legitimizing Azerbaijan's revisionist agenda, eroding Armenia's security, and leaving the country vulnerable as Baku lays the groundwork for future territorial claims. Members of the ARF Youth of Armenia protested outside the government building, condemning Aliyev's recent statements claiming Lake Sevan and other Armenian territories. Protesters criticized Armenian officials for their muted response, accusing Aliyev of historical falsification and warning that such rhetoric threatens Armenia's sovereignty. They called on the authorities to defend the nation's heritage and uphold the collective memory of the Armenian people. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev praised Turkish President Erdogan for backing Azerbaijan during the 44-day Karabakh War, crediting him with strengthening and inspiring the Azerbaijani army. Erdogan now says Turkey is coordinating with Baku to normalize relations with Armenia, calling it a window of opportunity for peace and stability in the South Caucasus. Yet, at the Orbeli Forum in Yerevan, Azerbaijani analysts revealed what Armenia has long known. Baku's so-called peace agenda conceals clear territorial ambitions. Rusif Huseynov, co-founder of the Baku-based Topçu Bashov Center, openly admitted that Azerbaijan's main goal over the past 5 years has been to secure a direct, unobstructed passage through Armenia's Syunik province to Nakhichevan, advancing its expansionist so-called Zangezur corridor plan. Leaked documents and recent events reveal that Azerbaijan's presidential administration is orchestrating a coordinated global campaign to legitimize territorial claims on Armenian land under the so-called Western Azerbaijan banner. The effort, backed by state-funded conferences, media outlets, and pseudo-academic projects, is presented internationally as cultural or humanitarian, but analysts warn it makes clear territorial ambitions. the so-called Western Azerbaijan community, publicly described as an independent NGO, is in fact fully controlled and financed by Baku, with activities held in Baku, Germany, and Brussels. President Ilham Aliyev has personally reinforced the narrative, calling for Azerbaijanis to return to historic Armenian lands and even claiming Lake Sevan. At a government-backed event in Baku on the same theme, Azerbaijani officials doubled down on these claims. Professor Fuad Mamadov, a close ally of Aliyev, accused the Armenian diaspora of distorting history and emphasized the supposed right of Azerbaijanis to return to present-day Armenian territory. Meanwhile, Aygun Aliyeva, head of Azerbaijan's NGO support agency, announced that 51 projects have been funded this year under this initiative, underscoring Baku's persistent push to legitimize its territorial ambitions. Analysts warn that Armenia's muted response risks normalizing these revisionist claims, allowing Baku to advance its agenda under the guise of cultural advocacy while putting national security at stake. Azerbaijan has intensified its demands, raising new concerns over Armenia's sovereignty. Foreign Ministry spokesman Ayhan Hajizadeh reaffirmed that Baku insists on the handover of 3 villages in Artsakh and the Kharki village in Nakhichevan, which analysts warn would reshape borders to meet Azerbaijan's maximalist goals. While Prime Minister Pashinyan has mentioned returning Artsakh and other territories, experts note this is largely symbolic, as Artsakh was never part of Azerbaijan's agenda. Ceding these areas, they say, would give Baku a legal and physical foothold inside Armenia and heighten border instability. Experts argue that alternative solutions, such as territorial exchanges or freezing disputes until trust mechanisms were established, could have safeguarded Armenian sovereignty. Instead, they say, the current government's approach to peace effectively serves Azerbaijan's agenda. Adding to these concerns, Hajizadeh also said a peace treaty depends on Armenia amending its constitution, which he claims contains territorial claims against Azerbaijan. Additionally, Azerbaijan has demanded the removal of the EU observation mission, claiming it serves as propaganda against Baku and insisting that no third-party forces be deployed along the border. Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev announced that the country's armed forces are being modernized to NATO standards with close Turkish cooperation, highlighting strengthened ties with the alliance. In contrast, Yerevan has shortened compulsory military service by 6 months, apparently for electoral reasons, and plans to cut defense spending, diverging sharply from Azerbaijan's growing military investment. A Turkish diplomatic source stated that the opening of the Armenian-Turkish border is not currently under discussion, though talks on normalizing relations between the two countries continue. The source noted that reopening the border depends on progress in those negotiations and that no specific timeline has been set. Despite repeated confirmations from Ankara that the issue is not on the agenda, officials in Yerevan continue to express readiness to open the border. Political analysts describe this eagerness as premature and diplomatically unwise given the current state of talks. Azerbaijan's military court has declared 15 former Artsakh leaders guilty, branding the entire Artsakh movement and the Miatsum organization, founded in 1988 to coordinate the unification movement, criminal, and accusing Armenia of orchestrating their actions. The indictment names prominent Armenian figures including Zori Balayan, Silva Gabutikyan, Igor Muradyan, Vazgen Manukyan, Robert Kocharyan, and Serge Sarkisyan, alleging they spread criminal ideology. Notably, former Armenian President Levon Ter-Petrosyan, who led the Karabakh Committee, was not among those charged. Defendant Vazgen Manukyan rejected the accusations, asserting that the movement sought Artsakh's unification with Armenia through self-determination. He accused Baku of using the trial to justify the ethnic cleansing of Armenians from Artsakh. Reporters Without Borders has included Azerbaijani President Ilham Aliyev and Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan in its 2025 Press Freedom Predators list for systematically suppressing independent journalism. Aliyev is cited for total state control over Azerbaijan's media and targeting journalists with arrest and exile, while Erdogan is listed as a legal predator, using defamation laws, anti-terrorism measures, and digital censorship to silence critics. The organization warns that both countries pose very serious threats to press freedom, undermining democracy and citizens' right to information. The Armenian Center for Political Rights has released a report titled Injustice in Armenia, Mass Political Persecution, documenting politically motivated prosecutions from May to September 2025. The cases include businessman Samvel Karapetyan, Archbishop Mikhail Ajabahian, members of the Sacred Struggle Initiative, and the Armenian Revolutionary Federation. The report accuses Pashinyan's government of orchestrating a campaign against the Armenian Apostolic Church, manipulating the judiciary, and using fabricated evidence to label political and religious figures as terrorists, while noting international bodies have largely failed to respond. The Armenian Patriarch of Jerusalem, Archbishop Nurhan Manukyan, voiced strong support for Catholicos Karekin II and the Mother See of Holy Etchmiadzin, urging authorities to respect church independence. He condemned attempts by a defrocked clergyman backed by state institutions to seize Hovhannes Monastery, calling them illegal and dishonorable, and emphasized protecting Armenia's spiritual heritage from political interference. Russian Secretary Council Secretary Sergei Shoigu said the situation in the South Caucasus remains a subject of constant attention and requires ongoing coordination. Speaking at a meeting with his Armenian counterpart Armen Grigoryan in Moscow, Shoigu emphasized the need for regular consultations on recent regional developments. Grigoryan expressed readiness to provide detailed information on the situation. Shoigu also held talks with the Secretary of Azerbaijan Security Council on the sidelines of the CIS Security Council Secretary session. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi reaffirmed that Tehran remains in contact with both Armenia and Azerbaijan regarding the Zangezur issue. He emphasized that Iran will not accept any geopolitical changes along its borders, adding that the country continues to monitor developments while maintaining that its national security faces no current threat. Built in 1967, Stepanakert's iconic monument, We Are Our Mountains, marks 58 years as a symbol of Armenian unity and resilience. Despite Azerbaijan's occupation of Artsakh, the volcanic tuff sculpture remains a lasting emblem of national identity, its two figures standing as silent witnesses to Armenia's enduring heritage. Our guest tonight is Hovhannes Avetisyan, public policy analyst and Master of Public Administration from Harvard University. Mr. Avetisyan, welcome.
Good evening.
The government that came to power in 2018, under the slogan of love and solidarity, has instead created an atmosphere of deep internal hostility, which many experts say now poses the greatest threat to Armenia's independence and statehood. Do you think Pashinyan and his team realized that this path could lead the country to catastrophe?
I believe whatever they do, they know it. They completely understand, and they do that intentionally. And the logic is divide and conquer logic, which is more divided the people, more it's difficult, close to impossible to unite and to remove them from power. So basically they understand what they do. I believe so.
Many, including some political groups, believe it's no longer possible to change the Pashinyan regime through elections, since those in power see holding office as their only guarantee of political survival and even personal safety. In your view, is a change of administration through the 2026 election still a realistic possibility?
I'm one of those people who believe that it's not possible to remove him from power through elections. And there are multiple reasons for that. One is the institutional setup that we have in the country. And basically the current constitution and the institutions and the way he usurped the power in all levels doesn't allow to transfer the power through elections. And as we know from historical past, from our past, we have never had a chance to transition the power through peaceful elections. Always something happened, and this is also due to the second reason. This is due to the foreign influence in our region. Since we are on the crossroads of East and West and South and North, always there are multiple influences on our region, and power in Armenia develops also, power shift also happens through those influences. That's the second reason. the third reason, that Pashinyan regime already committed so many crimes against Armenian people. I literally mean crimes by sort of giving up our interests internationally, giving up Artsakh, giving up the recognition of Armenian genocide and agreeing to change the constitution and giving up our independence preambles in the constitution and also giving up our symbols. All this means that Pashinyan knows what he does, and he is not. He also understands that if he gives up the power through elections, he and his team are going to be persecuted, and they are going to be they are going brought accountable to the courts. And this is why I believe that this is the third major reason that I believe it's not possible that he would agree to transition the power through elections.
Pashinyan has effectively launched his election campaign with unprecedented repression against dissenting voices, moves to dismantle all potential centers of resistance, and an open campaign against the Armenian Apostolic Church. If previous governments had done even a fraction of this, the West would likely have responded with resolutions and sanctions. Yet today, there is deafening silence. What do you think explains this double standard?
As I already mentioned, Pashinyan gave up our Armenian interests in all fronts, and by doing so, we basically became from regional factor. We had been a factor by 2020 war, and by giving up our rights, he turned Armenia into battleground between West and East. Basically, specifically meaning Russia against European Union and USA, and as in Ukraine, the battle is going on the ground and people are being killed. Here in Armenia, the battle is going on through soft means, which means propaganda, anti-Russian, anti-American, anti-European, and he has already, I mentioned, he divided the people. He made sure that it's not possible to unite against him. And he also knows in this process the Armenian Church is the only national institution, remaining only national institution, that is capable to unite all these people against his regime. And the only national institution that so far is protecting Armenian interests, and this institution is very solid and sound. That's why he created all these fake criminal, made-up, fabricated criminal cases on Bagrat Serpazan, his supporters, and others, on other archbishops, and he's trying to break down this national system, again, to make sure that his power is intact, that it's not possible to remove him.
Mr. Avetisyan, thank you for joining us. Our guest tonight was Hovhannes Avetisyan, public policy analyst and master of public administration from Harvard University. That's all for tonight's broadcast. Thank you for joining, and don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. Good night.